This video contains content sponsored by John Wilson Blades and MK Blades. Opinions discussed in this video do not reflect the views of John Wilson or MK. Hello and welcome to the Skating Lesson Olympian 360. I'm Jennifer Kirk.
And I'm Dave Leese, and today we're going to interview someone who's going to make us feel like we're a little bit lazy.
Underachievers, honey. We're underachievers.
We have accomplished nothing in our lives because Tabitha Yim made the World Championships in gymnastics. She was a novice level figure skater on the American level. She was also a pianist. She was an organist.
Honey, she went to Stanford.
She's a flautist. She went to Stanford. We have done
degree
nothing.
in biology. We're communication majors.
Yeah, I don't understand this. But I'm excited to learn from her and to learn how we can be better people, better gymnasts, what we need to tell ourselves before we compete. So we're super excited to speak with Tabitha Yim about this crazy world of figure skating and gymnastics. And we're hoping you're as excited for this interview as we are. Well, hello and welcome to the Skating Lesson, Tabitha Yim. We're thrilled to have you.
Oh, I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Well, okay, I research everything for guests who come on the show. I've been watching interviews with you, all of your performances. And one thing that really sticks out to me is that you've said that gymnastics is obviously your favorite sport. But you said that basketball is your second favorite sport. And I seem to remember you spending a lot of time in an ice rink, Tabitha. So what is going on here?
Yeah, that's funny because actually for a long time I was having trouble trying to decide between gymnastics and ice skating. And to tell you the truth, I always felt like I was a better gymnast, but my heart went to skating. I just loved my experience with skating. So I think when that question comes up, I think about the sports that I didn't do. And so my favorite sport to watch outside of those two is definitely basketball.
Okay, so now how did you get involved in both skating and gymnastics? Because like you, I started in both, but quickly went right up to skating. Gymnastics just wasn't for me, but you continued on throughout both sports. So how did you get involved in both? Was it at the same time?
I actually started gymnastics first, and my mom was going to put me in ballet, but I was too young at the time, and my brother was at a local gym, and so she just took me along with him. And I was actually really bad to start off with. And my dad was so embarrassed that he couldn't even watch because I was so far behind all the other kids in the class.
How old are you?
Yeah. Sorry, 3.5.
Oh, you're 3.5. You're okay to be, we're bad at everything at 3.5, honey.
I know, right? But as I progressed, my mom, it made her really nervous just to watch the different skills in gymnastics. She felt like it was very dangerous. So she introduced me to almost every sport you can imagine to try to pull me away from gymnastics. And I fell in love with skating. But unfortunately, I didn't choose skating. I chose to do both. So her plan didn't really work out.
Okay, now which sport, because Dave and I debate this often, which sport in your opinion is harder? Because I always say that gymnastics is far harder than skating, but what do you think in terms of the two?
Gosh, it's so hard to compare. They're just so different.
Because I always tell Jenny it's the same sport. I'm like, you don't need to know anything about this.
It's so much more because for me, like skating, I just need to know how to skate. Like gymnastics, you have the 4 different apparatus that you have, and everyone's always going to have one that they hate. So, I mean, that's just, it's a mind fuck, like to begin with. And then I feel like in gymnastics, the coaches are much more intense. Like in skating, they don't yell at you as much. I didn't like that. I couldn't handle that. I was like, why are you yelling at me? I'm 6 years old.
You know what, though, in gymnastics, having that guidance over the course of your workout, it really helps you with your development, whereas skating, you just have the 1-hour lesson, and then you're pretty much on your own. And so in that sense, I thought it was very difficult. And I was told because I started skating later, I had all these bad habits from gymnastics. But gosh, I just think they're so different. It's hard to compare, but I thought both were challenging. I would say from an endurance standpoint, skating definitely helped my gymnastics because the routines were so much longer. But I think they kind of complement each other, to be honest. I think that gymnasts would be great figure skaters and vice versa if they spent an equal amount of time training both.
Well, growing up, who were you idolizing, skating, gymnastics, otherwise? Because not many people are doing both.
it's kind of funny, but my dad and I would have all these conversations on those early rides to the ice rink. And the person that he brought to my mind was Bo Jackson. So he didn't do either of the sports, but he was able to perform two sports at a very high level. And so he always told me, Tabitha, you're going to be the female Bo Jackson, okay? So it's possible. I know everyone your whole life is going to tell you it's not, but he's done it. And so that's somebody that I really looked up to. And then just on the ice, Christy Yamaguchi, of course, watched her when I was growing up. And on the gymnastics side, I really appreciated the international gymnasts. So Tatiana Gutsu, I remember watching her in the 92 Olympics, but also was a huge fan of Kim Zemeskel, who I know was on your show not too long ago.
We love her.
Yeah.
No, we know that you were also a musician because you weren't busy or Asian enough. So how did you have time to do everything and go to school and get into Stanford? At what point in time did your schedule become unmanageable?
You know, I look back and I think that I was crazy a little bit. I can't even believe that I did all those things, but I was very competitive. And so when I was when I was in middle school, I was in band. And I actually had to miss some of the classes because I would leave early for training. Mm-hmm. And so I was last chair. And it was very embarrassing for me. So I asked my mom if she could put me in flute lessons. And so found some time to do that and would spend 30 minutes every day practicing and was able to move up to first chair. So that's kind of how I got into flute. And to be perfectly honest, I've never slept much. Everyone in our family, we just don't sleep that much. And so I'd wake up at 4 a.m. for skating and then go to school and then do gym and just found a way to kind of piece it together.
How did your body handle it all, though? Because I know skaters, we have enough injuries. I mean, how much, well, the off ice is the gymnastics, but how did your body, I just think exhaustion would hit at some point.
Yeah, I used to take naps all the time. I think that definitely helped. And I feel very grateful because I always had such an amazing team in place. You know, they say it takes a village, and I truly feel like I had that from my skating coaches, Ronnie Robertson before he passed away, and then Mary Bechtel, as well as my coaches in club, Beth and Rybak. And then I also had a physical therapy team that I would go to quite often with Jeff. And so I feel like everyone was always on the same page, and they all really supported me and helped me in my efforts. And so it helped me maintain that balance, as well as, of course, my family and my church family. And so everyone, I feel very lucky to have had so many people pulling for me throughout my entire career, and owe so much to all of them, for sure.
So before you decided to focus just solely on gymnastics, what level did you reach in skating?
I was novice.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So did you make it through sectionals, or like what, I guess, competition-wise, what did you reach?
Yeah, I never really made it that far. I would just go to the first qualifying competition. And then actually in 2001, when I made Worlds, they petitioned me through to nationals, which was quite comical.
In skating?
Yeah, they did. And they're like, since you couldn't make it because of Worlds, we'd love for you to join us. And I just know how many people would have been upset by that. So, I felt like I just loved ice skating. And so even though I never reached the highest level, it was just something that really filled me up outside of the gym. And I was lucky that I had both coaches who let me really dabble in both sports.
You're too nice for skating, because I think any other skater would have just pushed that petition through and gone.
Oh, man. The skating world is definitely interesting. I feel like I was never truly embraced as an ice skater. I was always seen more as a gymnast. But starting off, I was a weird kid growing up. And so it was really hard for me to make some skating friends to begin with. And then once I started practicing more and doing a little bit better, I felt like I kind of found my niche when there was a skating club that opened by my house. But yeah, the skating world's pretty intense. I'm not going to lie.
Very intense.
Well, you're known for your artistic floor routines. So what were you like as a skater? Did you have a killer spiral, a layback? What were your programs like? I guess talk us through that.
Yeah, my programs were jam-packed. So at the time when I was novice, I was still working on a clean double axel I could do at cheated. And so what we ended up doing is a lot of combination doubles. So I do like double lutz, double toe, double loop. I think I had triple combinations like that at least 3 times within my program, because it's before they passed the new rules. Mm-hmm. But really enjoyed just athletic combinations and obviously like spirals and Charlottes and all those things I was able to do because of
flexibility,
gymnastics.
So would you say that you were a toe jumper or an edge jumper? Did you like Salchow loop or flip lutz?
Definitely a toe jumper. I think because I didn't spend that much time in skating when I first started, all the different edges and things like that, I think that's why people said I looked like a gymnast in ice skates, because those edges and things like that were not as natural to me as to some other people.
Interesting.
Well, growing up, you lived in Irvine, California, which is where Naomi Narinam is from, and she had a big splash in '99 as well. So did the two of you know one another?
Yeah, we actually homeschooled together in 8th grade. So I know her pretty well. And we're both Korean, and so, you know, there's that connection as well. Our parents knew each other pretty well.
Okay. Well, I was told that you took lessons from the same coach as young Caroline Zhang and Mirai Nagasu were at the same rink. So what do you remember of them as young skaters?
It's so funny. I remember them when they were really, really young. And just Caroline, she was at the rink 24/7, just all the time. And from the time she was 5 years old, she was just phenomenal. I mean, I remember just her zipping around and spinning and doing all these crazy things. And we always knew she had a really bright future. And at the time, Mirai was just coming up. I mean, she was working on her single jumps and just some of her beginning elements. And so I was really impressed with how quickly she rose up through the ranks. But I definitely knew them when they were very, very young, maybe 5, 6, 7. I still have, you know, at the skating competitions, they have those picture photo booths. I still have like a little photo that I took with each of them.
So young Caroline, did she still have the pearl spin? Did she have the kick on her jumps? Like, did anything change? Like,
Yeah, she definitely had all those things and all the cool spins and everything. I mean, gosh, yeah, she's a real talent. And, you know, her mom was very involved with her skating as well. So those two are definitely ingrained in my memory from my time in skating.
Now, two other skaters who were training in Southern California at the time were Michelle Kwan and Sasha Cohen. Did you have any interaction with either of them?
I never had any interactions with Michelle, but when I first started skating, I skated at Achilles, and so that's where Naomi and Sasha both trained, but I was nowhere near their level, and so I didn't really interact with Sasha too much, but I definitely knew who she was.
Yeah.
Well, in gymnastics, you started at Gym Max, which is where Kyla Ross is from, and then you went to Charter Oak Gliders under Beth and Steve Rybak. So how did that change come about, and how did you wind up under Beth and Steve?
To be perfectly honest, I went to almost every single gym in Southern California. I went to 8 different gyms and just kind of bounced around until I finally settled in at Gliders. But to be perfectly honest, I had great experience at all the different clubs, and they each developed me in a different way. And I did spend a long time at Gym Max with Howie, and they're like family still to us. But at the time, Jenny wasn't coaching. And all the girls who I had started off with training had transitioned into college. And so it was just a really challenging environment for me to stay motivated. And I wanted to be surrounded by people who are kind of in that higher level. And that's how I kind of got in touch with Beth and Steve and made that transition there.
Well, at that time, Tabitha, Vanessa Atler, she was the gymnast. I mean, I remember David and myself, we read every single one of her diary entries. She had that charisma in all the fluff pieces. So what was it like training alongside Vanessa? Did she have that charisma every day in training?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's just a great person and athlete all around and was very encouraging to me as I was coming up. Her and Jamie were such great role models for me, and just to watch what they went through, I definitely learned a lot. I was very shy at the time, and so, you know, I just kind of watch and admire what they were doing and how hard they trained. But the intensity that Beth and Steve brought, I definitely bought in after seeing how well those two were able to do.
Well, Vanessa became known for missing her Comaneci on bars, and NBC became known for picking up on it and just
She
showing
never
it.
missed it in practice.
Really? Because
It's a mental thing, yeah.
Yeah, so it would always kind of irk me that they'd bring that up because I'm like, you guys, she's so consistent in practice on each of those skills. Yeah, she would train so hard, and just the consistency across all 4 of her events. I mean, she's just phenomenal.
Well, speaking about consistency, Beth Rybak II was known for making her athletes do a certain number of everything in a row, whether it was 10, and you had to start over if you missed. So what do you remember about training with Beth? How real is that? And do you have stories of repeating routines again and again and again?
Yeah, that is definitely true. And I think that personally is exactly what I needed, is that type of structure and that type of discipline. So it helped me, but we had 10 in a row, and I remember falling on 9 in a row and having to start over. And we also would switch beams. And so we had 5 different beams, and you do a routine and then you'd switch to the next beam. And our third beam was legitimately, my key word on that beam was jump crooked, because it was so lopsided. And I remember complaining about it. And so she made me stay on third beam for a week. So I didn't complain much after that. But definitely, you know, they wanted us to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think it's why so many of our athletes do so well on balance beam. She definitely toughens you up.
Well, Steve is also a unique coach in many respects. He's a great technician, responsible for much of the technique in vault that we see today. Now, vault wasn't always your strongest event. So how did he change that? How did he come about fixing that for you?
You're right. He's definitely a great technician. And I think for me, I was never a strong athlete. And so the physical abilities testing, I would always get last place, no matter how hard I would try. It's just something that I always struggled with. And so I think that power on vaulting is something that I really had to work on. And because he taught me so technically, I didn't have to rely on my power on that event. And he always would say, you know, stay bouncy and focus on the quickness of the kickover and all those things. And I think if it weren't for him, I would have been even worse on vault. And so I'm sure I was a challenging athlete for him to work on that event.
Well, you talk about not being a natural athlete, but beam and floor you are excellent at. So what was it about those two events? Was there a moment when you really felt like, okay, these are my events? Or was it something that from day one you were always pretty good at?
I always loved those two events. They always seemed to come most naturally to me. And I think when I was younger, the twisting elements, and I really think skating did help with that. I just had awareness when it came to those skills. And so that allowed me to do well on floor. And, you know, the performance aspect and being able to show your personality, that's something that I've always loved about gymnastics. And I felt like you really have an opportunity to do that on those two events.
Well, one of your biggest weapons on floor appeared to be your dance sequences, because back in the 2004 quadrennium, all of the girls that you competed against really struggled getting their leaps around, and you did different jumps and leaps than everyone else. So walk us through how you got all of your dance bonus elements, and what, you know, and how did that become such a strength?
That's Beth. You know, she'd always have us working all kinds of different drills and different combinations, and we'd spend a lot of time playing around with those things. And she's such a creative person. I mean, from her choreography to the leap passages and everything, she was very forward thinking, and so I credit a lot of that to her and just making time and prioritizing that.
Well, speaking about choreography, you were known for your wrist choreography. Now, was this something that you did in skating as well? How did this choreography come about?
Yeah, they didn't like it so much in skating, and I know there are quite a few people who didn't like it in the gymnastics world as well.
Oh.
I don't know
I loved it.
My wrists do that. They just are hyper mobile in that sense.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, Beth really helped develop that too. She felt like it made dance more dramatic when you could add that final flick. And so she definitely helped me develop that style and that presentation.
I always think it's always best to accentuate the difference. Whatever you have, you got to flaunt it.
Yeah, like if you have a big something feature, like, yeah, own it, honey. Not that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
Well, one thing commentators always mentioned was your ability to hang up a triple full where it looked like you were kind of delayed in the air at the top of that flip and twisting. So what is the key to doing that? Because I really miss, you know, watching the generation before, those cheated triple fulls that we tried to see, and you didn't have that problem. So you need to walk us through.
Sure. To be honest, I didn't have the best technique. And when I learned my triple full, I actually over-rotated it so much to the point where one day I was so frustrated, I still remember at Gym Max, that I decided to walk into it and I punched at an extreme angle, and it popped me straight up, so I was able to do my triple without over rotating. And so I would over exaggerate the block. And Steve actually worked really hard with me to try to get it up and down. And I think that ultimately that's why I tore my Achilles on that skill. Is it's really not a good technique to block it like that, especially because I struggled with Achilles problems my entire life. But I do think that, that kind of helped me go straight up and down.
So you spoke a little bit earlier about how your time on the ice helped that twisting that body awareness in the air. But can you compare the two? What is it like to do a jump and twist on the ice versus twisting during a tumbling pass? I mean, how is that? Is it faster twitching? Is it the same kind of, getting into that air position?
I think once you feel that the centrifugal force, it's kind of the same. It's just your body position in the air. But I think in skating, the torque that you feel that kind of speeds up, it's the same thing in gymnastics. And so the concept is the same. It's just
sometimes you're upside down.
Exactly. But it's the same thing, how when you block, you're kind of setting yourself up before you pull it in to twist.
Well, the first thing I ever noticed about you was your floor routine when you were a junior gymnast. So how long did you perform your floor routine to Heart Still Beating for?
Gosh, I think I competed that routine for 3 years. When I got a new routine when I was in senior, my very first year, Marta preferred the Heart Still Beating routine. And so my first nationals, because I actually loved the other routine, I competed both routines. And so the first day I performed one, and then the next day I performed the other. But we stuck with the Heart Still Beating one for Worlds.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you perform the first day? Did you ever perform that routine again? Or?
No, I didn't. I performed it at Classics, but it was a flamenco type routine. Yeah.
Well, you first qualified for nationals at the junior level in '98, where you finished 22nd in the all-around. So what do you remember about that experience?
I remember I got a 6'9" on beam because at first my routine was overtime, and then they took out a bunch of skills, the national staff, to try to help me because I didn't realize that I had been overtime. And then I went so quickly that I was actually under time by the time I competed. And it was my first time on podium, and I was so nervous. And I was sitting there, and one of the athletes walked by, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, 6'6" for Tabitha Yim. Who's that?" Oh. And I responded, "Yeah, who is she? She sucks." I was so embarrassed.
Do you remember this person who walked by? I would never forget that. Oh, it would drive me.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mess. I missed both my feet on my noti. I fell on my series. I only did a front layout dismount.
Just one of those ones you want to forget.
Yeah.
Did you use that because the next year you placed second at nationals? So what changed between those 2 years?
I think just the transition. I joined a different club, and also that year, my first year, I had a really long season. So before I competed international elite, I competed national elite, like the US Challenge. And so I think by the time I got to nationals, I was just so tired and burned out that affected my performance as well.
Well, after that championships, Vanessa Adler, she switched gyms, and this was a big hoopla. So what do you remember? Were you as shocked as everybody else? What do you remember about that time?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked that she switched because I know she has always had such a great relationship with Beth and Steve. And to be honest, I had just had a major injury, so I wasn't in the gym during that time. I had an avulsion fracture with my hamstring, and so I had to take 6 months off of gym, and that's kind of when all of that happened. Yeah.
I remember that was in the day of email lists, and I just remember opening my email one day, and it was like 1,000 emails downloaded. But Jamie Dancher also switched gyms. She came back. There was even a time when you were rumored to be looking at hills. So what is going on at Charter Oak? I feel like everyone leaves. Can we not live with or without Beth and Steve? Like, what is happening?
I think because there's so many great clubs in Southern California, it happens pretty often that people look at different places. But the one thing that I'll say about Beth and Steve is they really care about their athletes and developing them as people. And so I think that's why people always come back. And it's tough to train at that level, and they definitely pushed us to be at our best. And I know for me personally, my mom and Beth and Steve had a little bit of a disagreement, and so that's why I ended up looking at hills. But I personally never wanted to leave, and they were able to make amends, and so I went back. But
so it was more about them than it was anything
yeah.
that you. Okay, that's what it happens. Yeah, all sports that parents get. Yeah, there's always something. But in 2001, you placed second at the national championships, and that year the top 3 at nationals, they were guaranteed a spot on the world team. So talk us through that event.
Nationals or
nationals?
Yeah, nationals.
Yeah. Gosh, I just remember feeling really prepared for that year, and just being excited to be in senior national for the very first year, and not really knowing what to expect from it. And talking with Beth and Steve, it was really just do what you can, put your best out there, and see where it lands you. And so it kind of all was a whirlwind, and that whole experience is just a really great memory that I have, and just feeling, to be perfectly honest, in my elite career, that's one of the most prepared I've ever felt heading into a competition. So it felt really gratifying to be able to put it out on the floor.
Now, was that your first time on TV? And I guess, what is that like, adjusting for competing, and now all of a sudden you have the cameras trailing you at all times?
I was always pretty focused, so I actually really enjoyed that aspect of it, and just being able to showcase my work on that stage. It didn't bother me too much. I think the hardest thing were just interviews, and I've had some stuff happen in my life, and so all those things were always brought up, and so it was something that I just had to be prepared for when those questions were asked, and then always just try to switch my focus back. Mm-hmm.
Well, those World Championships featured the first Worlds with the team being led by Marta Karolyi, and they were also the first 3-up, 3-count team final. So that's a lot of intensity all around. What was the preparation and training like for that event?
It's so funny. It was so intense, and this was before, like, the National Training Center now, they have built a new side to it, and so you actually walk through the old gym to get to the new facility. And the older facility, I mean, there's no air conditioning. And I just remember this one story. I think you guys will appreciate this. We're on bars, Tasha and I, and there's a huge spider right by the chalk bucket. And Arthur was national staff at the time. We're like, oh my gosh, Arthur, come here. You got to kill this spider. It's so big. And right before he stepped on it, it had babies, little spiders everywhere. I don't know why that comes to mind, but
were you guys? Were you able to react, or was it one of those things?
We were like jumping all over the place. Yeah. I just remember that. Oh my gosh! But I will say that team, I think, was really special because none of us were teammates, and so every single person came from a different club. So I felt like we were very cohesive, and especially for it to be that first year under Marta, we were really close as a team, and we had a great time in Ghent. And there are so many other things going on at that time. We didn't even know if we'd be able to go to Worlds. And so, I think that impacted everything. But we were really close, and obviously lots of numbers and things like that. But I thought it was a great start to kind of this new era for USA Gymnastics.
Now, heading into that event, the U.S. hadn't medaled since the 1996 Olympic Games, and then you win the bronze there. So do you think that put more stress on your shoulders, or conversely, did it make it easier to kind of go out and say there's no expectations, we're not trying to defend any sort of medal or anything like that? I mean, was it stressful in retrospect?
I don't think we even thought about that. I'm sure the coaching staff and the national staff had that in mind, but as athletes, I didn't know any of those stats. I mean, we felt like we were a great team and we could do good things, but we were more focused on just hitting our routines than anything else.
What was Marta's reaction after the event? I mean, did you see excitement happen? I mean, did she ever let that Marta?
Like?
Yeah, what is that moment?
Yeah, she was definitely excited about medaling. And I think for her, too, it being her first year, she must have felt some sense of relief, like, oh my gosh, it actually worked, and so she it was my birthday that year, and she was very kind to me, actually. She even bought me like perfume for my birthday gift because I had just turned 16. And in that first year, I think she was figuring things out for herself as well. So it turning out the way it did, I think, was exciting for everyone.
So many gymnasts dream of competing in the all-around finals, and at that time, Svetlana Horkina and Andrea Radikon were the big names on top of their game. You finished 7th in that event, so did competing there live up to the hype?
Oh, absolutely. And I always loved their gymnastics, and being able to interact with them on the floor was especially exciting for me. And when I was at World Championships, after my beam routine, they showed me up on the big screen, and my brother was in the crowd, and he screamed out, "That's my sister." And right at that moment, I think Tasha had told me a joke, and so I started laughing, but it looked like I heard him say that. And the Romanian team was actually sitting next to my brother when he said that, and they thought it was hilarious. And so every time Andrea Rodicon saw my brother, she'd say, "That's my sister, that's my sister." So I fell in love with her even more. And I remember also at Worlds in the bathroom, I had a lot of trouble with my number, and she happened to be there. And so she helped me with it in the bathroom. And she's such a sweet person, and it was just a very special experience for me.
Well, your floor score there put you in contention to medal in the event finals. Yet you didn't have your best performance. So what happened there?
Gosh, I think I was first up. And to be perfectly honest, I must have warmed up that pass 5 times. And then by the time I did it out there, it just felt
too
off.
Much, yeah.
Didn't do it. Yeah. And I was still very immature at the time, and I probably should have just gone for the front full, but I brandied it out. And so I don't know what I was thinking, quite honestly. Just made an error, and the whole rest of the routine I was thinking about it. Should I try to add a skill? Should I try to do this? But yeah, I think the pressure got to me in that moment.
Understandable.
Well, after the 2001 Worlds, the depth on Team USA just exploded, as it seemed like everyone was turning senior, all of the children of the baby boomers. So with so many girls, how stressful did those camps get?
They were very intense, and I think, to be perfectly honest, the intensity grew with each year, and I think '04 was the most cutthroat for sure. And for me, I was injured for so much. I mean, the '03 season, I didn't compete at all. And then in 2002, I had so many injuries, I actually didn't end up competing until the national championships. And so I wasn't able to attend a lot of those camps until '04. But, it was pretty cutthroat. And I think everyone is going after the same dream, coaches included, and everyone invests so much time into it that they're just trying to look out for their athletes. But every single thing did matter, from the workout day, from your warm-up turns, and I think it was definitely a lot of pressure for everyone who was on the floor.
Now, all of you girls at camp, we see photos now of social media, and you all say your friends and sleepover type of a thing. And you talked a little bit earlier about how skating is a little intense, and let me tell you, if I were at a camp with Michelle Kwan and Sasha Cohen, Sarah Hughes in 2003, we would not be friends. We would not be talking. So how friendly is this? I mean, are you guys actually doing the sleepovers, painting each other's nails?
I think there is a really good vibe among the athletes in the gymnastics world, and I know for me on the national team, like Courtney Kupets and I were very, very close. And Katie Heenan and, Liz Tracos. And there are definitely people that you naturally just
gravitate towards.
Yeah, gravitate towards. And so, I think that we were going through the same things, and I'm sure you can attest to this a lot of times, especially friends in high school, when you try to explain what you're going through, they're like, "Oh, yeah," as if they understand, but you really can't understand unless you're going through it. And so I thought that they provided great support for me, and especially with Courtney having gone through similar experiences with the Achilles, we've remained great friends even now. So yeah, I'd say that we actually are friends, not best friends with everyone.
Respect
yeah.
that you guys were able to do that, because I could not.
Do you get to pick who you room with? Because I think that would be a big factor in this.
Yeah, no, we didn't get to pick. You get there, and then your names were on a list, and you just would look to see who you were rooming with.
Fingers crossed that.
Yeah, seriously.
Your arch rival, yeah.
Yeah. Well, walk us through these camps, because you said that every turn, every warm-up matters. So, I mean, how much does it matter? Is someone taking notes on everything? Like, is this being tracked? How does this all work?
I'm pretty sure in the Olympic year that it was being tracked. Not only from people on national staff, but also other coaches just trying to advocate for their athletes, kind of watching and seeing what other people were doing. But the very first day you got there, you'd have the physical abilities training or testing. And for me, that was always the most stressful part of it because I was so bad.
What was your worst part of the physical abilities testing?
I was bad at everything, physical abilities.
But you could always put it together.
The struggle is real. Leg lifts. Man, the horizontal ones, we had to do 20. And the very first time I did it, Kim Zemeska was actually judging me on them. And it's not supposed to count unless you actually touch the bar, you know? And people were getting it finished in less than 20 seconds, and it took me 2 minutes. I kid you not. That very first time. And my last one, I could not touch the bar, and so she wasn't counting it. I'm like, man, I'm already at a minute 30.
Just give me something. She's a tough one, yeah.
We're gonna have to talk to Kim about this. She's a little tough here. Now, how does the physical abilities count? Does it impact your overall ranking at the camp? Does someone talk to you about your physical abilities? Like, how does this happen?
No, I mean, I think it's a really great program because obviously strength is a huge part of your performance and staying healthy. And so I think it was just mostly to make sure that people were prioritizing it, but it didn't impact your rankings at all. And then the second and third days, you'd have your training, and the final day was always a verification where you go around and show all the events. And sometimes they break it up. So one day it was like beam and floor, and then the next day it was vault and bars. And yeah, it was a lot of pressure.
So from the outside, it always looks like this camp is just to get Marta's attention. Like you're vying for her attention. You want her to give you that check mark, the stamp of approval. So do you know when she's watching you? Does your coach kind of tell you a little bit like, hey, honey, or do you just expect her to be there at all times?
You definitely knew when she was watching. I mean, you could feel her presence, and she wasn't trying to hide the fact that she was watching you at all. And I think that was her way of just seeing how mentally tough you were. She'd walk over and say, all right, let's see your routine. So it could be a practice turn or the verification. She always watched the verifications, but, you know, you definitely wanted to show your best work when she was watching.
So say you show up at camp not looking your best. You know, you're not in the best shape. You're not doing well in the physical abilities. Does anyone actually ever say anything to you, or do they not have to? Is it just like you know that they're not watching?
You can tell like the vibe is not in your favor.
Yeah, I'm sure the conversations were had with our coaches. But I mean, when you're in there, you know when you're not at your best. And I'm not really sure what it's like now because it's been such a long time. But I feel like it would probably be better not to go if you're not in your best condition, unless you tell them on the front end, like, hey, I'm coming back from an injury or sickness or something like that.
I ate that pizza last night. Just couldn't help myself. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So you were chosen for the 2002 American Cup, and you reportedly looking very good in training. You did well in the vault, and then you suffered rare misses on bars, and then you had one of the scariest, most painful-looking falls on a front aerial that I think we have ever seen on the balance beam. So talk us through that day.
I try to forget that competition. It's probably one of the worst ones.
Well, we're sorry for bringing it up.
Yeah. No, but I think it's kind of funny. I mean, you watch the bar routine and I did the squat on the wrong way, and then I turn around on the low bar. I mean, it was a hot mess. Yeah, my foot slipped off on the front aerial, and more than anything, I think it just hurt my pride because it was extremely embarrassing to be there. But I had just gone through a growth spurt and was just trying to get my timing back on a lot of my skills. And so all of it kind of came out in that competition.
Well, after that event, you were injured for several months and just came back right before the national championship. So how much training did you actually have before that event? Not
very much. Probably 3 weeks. And I know I got made fun of for that national championships because I was talking to myself.
That was my next question, because NBC loved to show you what was going on there.
And I never really did that after that competition.
Because they showed it, or was it necessary? Because you went 8 for 8 at that event. So was it because you were talking?
I was so ill prepared.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, I didn't have a lot of confidence because I hadn't been able to do a lot of numbers. And I think even Beth and Steve kind of threw up their hands and were like, well, yeah, exactly. We'll see how it goes, you know? Training hasn't been great. And so for me, especially after 01, when I had felt so prepared heading into that national championships, just to get that extra boost of confidence, I had to actually hear myself say that I could do it, to kind of try to convince myself that I was ready for that moment. And so that is why I was so vocal that year, because I didn't have the numbers behind me to kind of rely on, and all I had was my experience and any bit of self-belief that I had.
Now, is this something that you tell your athletes now, that, I mean, to kind of impart that and say, hey, it's good to have that positive self-talk? Is that something that you utilize?
Yeah, absolutely. Something Beth and Steve definitely taught me, and it's actually in line with what we did at Stanford too, just keywords when you're going into an event, something to focus on. Because I think especially in gymnastics, it's really easy for your thoughts to kind of trail off. And so having those keywords definitely helped. And I think just in that one circumstance, saying it out loud, and for some athletes will do that, you know, make them vocalize that confidence before they get up there. Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously a second place finish at nationals had you in a good position to make the world team for a second time. But you did go to the camp. So what happened there?
So I didn't find out until after the camp, but I had been, my Achilles had been hurting quite a bit. And so when I went to the camp, I actually only competed beam because it's the only event that I could perform. And right afterwards, I went and finally got an MRI, and my Achilles at that point was 80% torn. So I'm actually really happy that I didn't end up being able to go to that championships, because who knows what would have happened had I continued training.
Well, following that meet, I believe you won the American Classic, and you were at the meet where they had the US and Australia compete against one other team. But how did you pull that off with all of your injuries?
In 04?
I guess, was it 03 that there was a team meet that Chelsea Memel won, and I think you were there?
I think that was 04, because I didn't really compete at all in 03.
Okay.
Yeah, because I had this... When they found out that my Achilles was torn 80%, there was this really progressive treatment that they were talking about at the time. It was called shock therapy. And so basically I know what you're thinking. No, but they put your foot underneath extreme, like, kind of, I can't even explain it, but it basically re-tears your muscle so that it can stimulate growth. Because what had happened is I had so many Achilles problems that when it healed back, it didn't heal properly, and then it wasn't stimulating blood flow or anything like that. And so by adding trauma to that site, it was hopefully going to bring blood flow and healing. And we had a misunderstanding of how long that process would take. We thought it was just a month, but it ended up being 6 months. And so it was almost like having a surgery, quite honestly, and it took me out completely for that next year.
Well, you talk about being out that year, and we saw photos of you at Worlds, but at what point did you feel like you were back kind of together heading into 2004?
So in 04 at the American Classic, I actually had surgery 4 days before that because my knee just every so often would like get inflamed, and then it would be fine the next day. And so I had orthoscopic surgery, and thank goodness my doctor at the time, his name was Dr. Hussein, he did a very special orthoscopic surgery for me specifically because he knew it was an Olympic year. So generally when you have the procedure done, you go through the quad muscle, but he elected not to do that and just go through my knee so it wouldn't compromise the strength in my quad. And he was able to find a bunch of floating cartilage that was getting lodged in different areas of my knee, causing that pain. And so I was back after 1 week to full training after having that done. And honestly, after that, I felt like I was finally back and that I was ready for that year.
Well, you went to the ranch for one meet right before nationals. So how ready did you feel going into nationals? It's the Olympic trials at that point. Did you feel you were in good position?
Um, One thing I'll say that Steve's also really great at was just the training plan that we had. And to be perfectly honest, he didn't want us to peak at the national championships because he was anticipating that we'd make the Olympics. And so his ultimate plan was for us to peak at the Olympics. And so going into the national championships, I still wasn't at full strength. And I still remember, because I had been through so many different surgeries, a lot of people were petitioning after the first day and electing not to compete the second day. And I remember it was a conversation that we had with Beth and Steve about me because I had been through so much. And I remember it was quite a stressful day because I was trying to make this decision and I was crying and I didn't know if they wanted me to do that because they didn't believe in me, but really it was just, it's your choice. There was no pressure to it. And I ultimately decided that I did want to compete because I felt like if I'm going to make Olympic trials, I'm going to do it the right way. And if I don't make it, then, I just wanted to make sure that I earned my spot there. And heading into beam, which was the third event, the results flashed up and I was in 12th and only 14 make it to Olympic trials. And I remember Beth she looked at that and she said, okay, Tabs, you're the one who wanted to do this. So, let's see what you got. And I was standing on the mat getting ready for my mount on beam because I had that switch leap mount and my legs were shaking because I was so nervous and so terrified. And I don't know how I stayed on the beam that meet, but conquering that moment gave me so much confidence going into Olympic trials because I remember thinking, if I could make that beam routine, I could make any beam routine, anytime, any place, anywhere. And so it gave me a lot of confidence going into Olympic trials, and I felt very confident going into that meet.
Well, you did finish 7th at those nationals, so you moved up 5 spots with that routine, and you finished 4th at the trials. So talk us through the pressure of competing at Olympic trials. It was in California. This is your moment. So walk us through that competition.
Beth and Steve prepared us so well for that moment. And I just remember how consistent practices were heading into that meet. I felt so prepared on every single event. There wasn't even a question of whether or not I was going to make my routines. And especially being in my hometown, and now looking back at that competition being my final one in international elite, it was just so special. My whole family was there, and my mom and brother actually rented like one of those suites up in the stands, and they invited every single person that I knew. And just to be able to finish and to go out in that way, it's something that I cherish and that I feel very, very lucky to have been able to experience. Speaking the Olympic trials, I felt really, really strong about my chances. And I was really excited to get into the gym. I remember I had made all these notes of things that I thought I had done well and things that I could improve before I got to the camp, and was very excited to go in and tell Beth kind of the game plan that I wanted to do along with them. And unfortunately, I tore my Achilles that very next day. So it was short-lived.
How did you tear your Achilles? What happened?
So the day after trials, we had practice, and I remember it felt weird. And, I've talked to a lot of people who have actually had this happen to them, and it didn't hurt at all, but something felt off about it. And so I remember that whole day, just my punching wasn't great. And when I punched for my triple full, that's when I tore it, when I was doing that first half of my floor routine.
And is that the same Achilles that you had the shock therapy on?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess, how long did it take you to be at peace with not competing at the Olympics? Because, you talk about doing so well at Olympic trials, feeling like you pretty much made it or on track to make it. Marta said she would have taken you. So how long does that take to kind of get over that?
You know what? If I had not performed well, I think it would have been harder for me to get over that moment than having my Achilles rupture, because I felt like it was completely out of my control. There's nothing more I could have done. It was literally that my body had failed me in that moment. And And there are all these weird family stories that I could share with you, but basically what it boils down to is it was always a big dream of me and my dad for me to go to the Olympics. And there are certain things that happened in that moment that kind of reminded me of him, and that, things happen for a reason. And so for whatever reason, that was the path that I was on. But that helped me have a lot of peace about that.
Were you able to watch those Olympics that summer, or did you go off?
I didn't watch. Yeah, I went. Our family went on an Alaskan cruise with my godparents, and so we were kind of just appreciating nature and got some space from the sport and from that moment.
Well, at that time, I remember that GGMB had a nickname for you, and yet they did a collection to send you flowers. So how bizarre was that whole time?
You know what? I really appreciated that because there's this article that came out before Olympic trials that said, what would you do? What are you going to do when you're done with your gymnastics career? And obviously being an elite athlete, had pretty strict eating habits leading up to that championships. And so I listed off about 8 different restaurants that I was going to go eat at and everything that I'd order at each of those places. And so they sent me flowers, and then I guess they had read that article. So they actually sent me a gift certificate to each of those restaurants that I had planned to go to. And so I thoroughly enjoyed all of them. I actually went and I ate all of those places and did all of those things, but it was very touching that they would reach out in that moment. And I was very grateful for that.
Well, after that, you began competing for Stanford. So how does competing on the collegiate circuit compare to that as an elite?
I loved my college experience. And it's a lot different because, to be perfectly honest, I was kind of tired of the sport of gymnastics after all that training and dedicating so much time to it. I don't even know if I really loved the sport when I went in my freshman year. And I think Kristen helped me find that and really helped cultivate that team chemistry and that team culture so that even though I may have lost a little bit of love for the sport itself, I had so much love for my team and the mission that we're going on. Everything that I did for them. And so that really helped make the experience so much more fulfilling. And I think that's what's so beautiful about college athletics. I mean, it's the one time in your life where I feel like every single person on your team is rooting for you to actually be successful, not secretly hoping you're going to go and fall. And there's something really powerful and beautiful about that.
It's genuine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, nowadays, Kristen Smith sometimes has a reputation for being as intimidating as Marta. Do you think that's deserved?
I don't think that's deserved at all. I'd actually love to hear where that comes from because I think it's almost comical.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, student athletes, they often complain about having to, I'm not complaining, but they talk about how difficult it is to balance school and whatever sport they're competing in. So how did you manage it? Was it something where you were so used to at a young age just having a myriad of things going on that it was part of your makeup to be able to do so well in both?
Yeah, and I think that, something that my parents always told me when I was growing up is gymnastics and ice skating, it's something that you do, but it's not who you are. And so I was really excited to go to Stanford because when I went there on my official visit, they kind of sat me down and they told me, just so you know, when you come here, it's not like you're going to be some superstar. You are just a normal student like everyone else who has something special to offer to the students around you. And so don't expect to be treated like special, I guess. I think Kristen was horrified when they told me this, but I actually knew in that moment that that's where I wanted to go because I wanted to be a student. My whole life I had been known as the gymnast. And so that's something, that balance and finding my passions outside of the gym was something that I had really looked forward to my entire life. And so I loved it.
Well, you received your degree in biology. So how did you start teaching?
So in my junior year at Stanford, you were required to do an internship for your major. And so I actually volunteered at a camp. It was called Camp Kesem, and it's for kids whose parents are suffering from or who have passed away from cancer. And my dad passed away when I was 13, and so I felt like I could really connect with each of those kids, and I worked with the older group of campers. And it was such a fulfilling experience that it switched my path. And after doing that, I decided that I really wanted to work with youth and to look into nonprofit work. And so the day of graduation, I actually flew to New York and I started working at a nonprofit there. And from then, I kind of just was exploring all kinds of different options and looked into Teach for America. And I was teaching in Boston at the time to see if it's something that I enjoyed and that I wanted to pursue. And luckily, I was admitted into the program, and so I was able to serve Teach for America in LA.
Hmm. Well, you eventually got the call to take up coaching at Stanford. Now, they say that people become their parents as they get older. Do you become your coach? Like, what are you like as a coach? Are you like Beth? I mean, how would you describe yourself?
I think that's pretty true. I think, like I said, I've just been so lucky to have so many phenomenal mentors and people in my life who've kind of shaped me into the person I am today. And I think some of that is definitely my parents, my godparents, and my family, and then each of the coaches that I had along the way. But one thing that Beth and Steve and Kristen kind of have in common is just the core values that they live by, that they coach by, that they rely on to run their programs. And so that's something that I've kind of carried with me when I coach, is just really figuring out what is important to me as a head coach, to our staff, and then deferring to those values whenever I make a decision or whenever we're trying to, find direction for our program.
Well, you're now the head coach at Arizona, and you specialize in recruiting, obviously. You previously recruited at Stanford, and it seems like you can pick anyone at Stanford. Now, Arizona, you have the challenge of bringing up this program to the level of national prominence. So how do you convince us to go to Arizona? Why should we go there?
It's really funny because when I came here on my interview, I was really curious about Arizona because I didn't really know too much about it. And right when I came into McHale, which is a building that houses all the different sports, there's just this sense of family here on campus. And it reaches all the way through the community. It's a true college town. And so people in Tucson, they love the University of Arizona. And being a gymnastics coach, even going to the grocery store and having people say, "Oh my gosh, Coach Yim, welcome to Tucson. We're so excited to have you." And I'm shocked that they actually know who I am and that they're engaged in our program. But I feel like for athletes who have dedicated their lives to this sport and who have poured so much time and energy, to come to a place that's truly going to celebrate who you are and what you do is so rewarding. In addition to that, I was just blown away by the different life skills programs they have. They have an honors college here that's very competitive. Their Eller School of Management is ranked top 2 in the country. And so I think it's just such a great balance of all these different support systems and people. And ultimately, that family environment is what drew me here, being a part of something bigger and something special. I think we have some pretty exciting people coming in, and hopefully we can just continue to build.
Well, we will look for that and root for you guys in that sense.
Thank
but
you.
As we start to wrap things up, we want to end with some fun questions. Now, you trained alongside many of the dancers, 4 of whom competed in gymnastics. Now, they're known for all having a J to start their first name and an A for the middle name. So how many of those 4 J names can you name?
Of the 9, can you name all 9 dancers?
Oh, gosh,
there's 9? I thought there were only 4.
Well, 4
the 4 who did gymnastics, it doesn't really follow that pattern because Jen is the oldest one. And then there's Jamie, and then the twins are Jalen and Janelle. And then they have another sister, Joanne, and then Johnny and Jeremy. Am I missing anyone? I may be missing one.
The parents, I think. You would be, because you did 7, and then what are the parents? Can you do it?
Oh, gosh. I can't believe I'm forgetting their parents' names. Mr. and Mrs. Jancher.
There you go. Nicely done.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's a story is that you said that you had your birthday at the 2001 World Championships. So true or false, was the team allowed to divide a slice of pie into 7 pieces?
7 pieces. Yeah. And my brother had to advocate to make sure that we got that slice of pie. So
I love it. So, okay, Marta Caroli, she's known for her signature accent. Is there a favorite word that she says for you that you really enjoy? Dave, what's yours?
Mine is when she goes, "Excellent!" and when they come off and she claps like that. Yeah.
Starfish hands. Do you have
the phrase that she used all the time in '01 is, "It is what it is." Every single day, she must have said that. Mm-hmm.
I like when she says something bad and she kind of like changes her head. Like,
My goodness.
All right. What is your most bizarre memory of the animal situation at the ranch?
Oh, we used to have to stay in the cabins when I was a junior, which is way out in the boonies. It must have taken, it was a far walk. And so we were next to this lake with these black swans that were really mean. And so they'd chase you, actually. And granted, sometimes kids would kind of
taunt them.
Yeah, taunt them a little bit. But I remember Larissa Stewart actually were running away from the swans, and she actually got bit by one of them when we were trying to run back into the cabins. And I remember another time one was standing outside of our door, and so we're trapped inside of the cabin. We couldn't get out. So those black swans caused us quite a amount of grief.
Now, what's your favorite MARTA memory? Do you have one memory that just stands out?
When was she really happy with you? And you were just,
I think she was really pleased with me at the Pan American Games. I did a really good beam routine, and so she was pleased with that. But I didn't really interact with her that much. I think being younger, I really deferred to my coaches and was pretty intimidated with her at the time. But yeah, nothing really comes to mind. I guess when my birthday, she gave me that gift and was just very complimentary to me in that moment.
Well, we talk about skating and how we're all kind of show-offs. So what was your favorite move to show off with on the ice?
On the ice?
Yeah.
I used to always do a Charlotte that went all the way out to the end of the door. So whenever everyone would clear off the ice, I'd be the last one to leave, and I'd just kind of try to aim it straight into the exit.
Oh, I like that. That's very unique. Nicely done. Now, our final question. Dave and I always laugh about how crazy figure skaters are. So who's crazier, skaters or gymnasts?
Skaters.
I knew it. Of course you are. Well, thank you so much, Tabitha, for coming on the skating lesson and sharing your career with us and your life. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed being on the show.